it's treated differently. And I feel like that's all I can even say. We're walking on thin eggshells here.
We're walking on thin eggshells.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Very often, especially with topics as sensitive as this, sometimes it's best to just quote without comment. Really.
Yeah. When you pretty soon we're gonna set up our paywall where you can hear the unfiltered reactions to these things.
Oh yeah. No, I'm never gonna put you couldn't pay me to put in that much effort in editing. Okay. Next. This is typical American government fashion, where something could be on the verge of, collapsing, and then all it takes is the government trying to eliminate it, and that's all it takes to, bring it back to life.
Better than ever.
Yeah. So, according to the failing New York Times, Trump's allies are targeting journalists over coverage deemed hostile to the White House. A loose network of conservative operatives allied with the White House is pursuing what they say will be an aggressive operation to discredit news organizations deemed hostile to President Trump by publicizing damaging information about journalists. Basically, they're compiling all racist tweets from the New York Times editorial staff.
Yes. I don't know what order this came in, but I think it was after it was announced there was that, I don't know if you call it leaked or what, but that it was found out that the New York Times had a meeting where they basically have decided they're going to try to frame everything in terms of racism for the next year. He talked about this, and he said they went from the phony this to the phony that, the Russian collusion narrative, the witch hunt, to a racism witch hunt. And this was because after the El Paso, Texas shooting, the New York Times had a headline, quote, Trump urges unity versus racism, because Trump said, hey, we should not be racist. And that's a standard headline for a standard boilerplate thing presidents say when these things happen. And they got so much backlash from Democratic lawmakers and candidates saying, I can't believe that they would just parrot what Trump says, because that's what the New York Times does. They just parrot what Trump's line is. So then they had a meeting that I don't know if it was leaked or released, but it is a transcript that went public where they said, basically, the gist of it was, people did not like that, and we're going to sort of change our whole focus to become about that, as how did America get so divided? And we're going to talk about race and make that the central, we're going to be asking these questions, and we're on this larger narrative that they're building. So they kind of indirectly admitted that going forward for at least the next year, they have a plan to, whenever they do their news coverage, to build a larger narrative and a context that they're going to put all the news boxes in that's about how America is racist and Trump is racist and Trump made America racist and racist America made Trump into the guy who's making America racist.
The Russians invented racism to destroy America's social utopia.
Basically. Although at the same time, racism is the foundation of America.
Yes. I mean, Vladimir Putin personally blasted the civil rights marchers with fire hoses.
Yeah, but the unfair way of spinning it is that the New York Times was caught admitting that they're going to turn every news story into a way to depict Trump as racist. Period. So they're basically going to try to gin up a race war because they think it'll be good for their brand.
And they're probably not wrong.
Isn't that sad? But as much as it's a horrible thing if a race war happens in this country, it will mean that every 2 weeks we'll be giving you great episodes.
Oh, yeah. When racism is allegedly on the rise in America, the moral minority is never short for content. Speaking of Trump and war, 2 weeks before the recording of this episode, as mentioned earlier, Donald Trump seemed to indicate that he was ready to withdraw from Afghanistan. According to the failing New York Times, President Trump met with top national security officials on Friday to review near-final plans for withdrawing American troops from Afghanistan, a prospect that has already prompted fierce political debate, but could offer Mr. Trump a compelling talking point for his 2020 re-election campaign. Just reading that paragraph, I think 3 places just already made me upset. A prospect that has already prompted fierce political debate. there is, I think, no greater way for me to feel some kind of way about an issue when the only thing you can say about it is that, well, people aren't unanimous on it. You know, Donald Trump wants to end a war older than some of the people fighting in it, but there's actually been some debate about whether that's a good idea. And if he did do it, it would be a compelling talking point for his 2020 campaign.
Right. I'm so tired. Why? You can take the first stab.
Yeah, I mean, let's not forget that Donald Trump is a person who has discussed wiping Afghanistan off the face of the earth.
Yeah.
Okay.
Why can't we just leave?
And if he did, let's not forget, if Donald Trump did just carpet bomb the country, we would be hearing from all these people about how presidential it was for Donald Trump to murder these people. Right?
Oh, yeah. It would be, well, except for the fact that he's Hitler, racist, Cheeto, whatever. That was pretty nice how he bombed that country. He bombed those people, I should say. It's like, if I quote Mike Gravel, why don't we just plain get out? It's their country. Why don't we just plain get out?
Yeah, and
what are we doing? The president, the head of the military that is executing this war, has multiple times said, I don't know why we're there. There's no discernible purpose or reason for us being there. Us being there is only a bad thing for the United States, even looking at it totally sociopathically, where you don't care about the people you're bombing or the other countries or anyone else in the world. Just looking at it solely for the United States, it's a bad thing. And nobody ever really rises to give a good defense of it. It's just like, well, we got to be there because we've always been there. And we've always been at war in Afghanistan, and we'll always be in war in Afghanistan. Because if we don't, somehow the entire world will fold in on itself and blink out of existence. Or something.
Yeah. It should, of course, be pointed out in fairness, that if America actually does withdraw, the country will fall into the hands of the Taliban.
So what?
Yeah, why?
Let them have it.
Because there's actually nobody else that could take over, considering that America was, during America's 20-year occupation, or nearly 20-year occupation of the country, we were basically propping up a government of warlords and pedophiles and reviving like old Soviet institutions and just creating the most centralized state apparatus ever in that country.
Yeah, which gives them something to fight over.
Yeah, one of the most corrupt governments in the world. And so, when we leave, the Taliban they'll win, and they'll win on the same sales pitch they won on last time, which is, we drove out the foreign occupiers. Also, look at these people, right? They will just also they'll terrorize, the Capitol, and they'll probably just start, firing rockets until the minorities leave, and then they'll roll in.
See, we can't leave Afghanistan, because if we leave, then this place that we don't want will go to some other people.
Yep.
Who won't do anything with it. It's not like, well, if we leave, China will take it. Which, first of all, even if that were true, great. I don't understand.
Let Afghanistan be China's problem. We've been through this. That's the wild thing. The American foreign policy consensus up until basically 2001 was that, whoever occupies Afghanistan, that's a surefire way to kill someone.
Yes.
If you can just trick them into occupying Afghanistan, then everything else doesn't matter. So we can just trick the Communist Party of China into invading Afghanistan. That's it. GG. That's how Donald Trump wins. China's economy will finally collapse.
A central part of the strategy in the later years of the Cold War was to foist Afghanistan onto the Soviets to drain them of all their resources, because everybody knows that, like you said, whoever occupies Afghanistan is fucked. So we said, hey, what if we had them occupy it and we helped draw that out? Then they'd be fucked. And then somehow they tricked themselves in some sort of circular loop into occupying it. It's like this cancer sore on their stomach. And somebody says, hey, we should cut that out. And they say, well, what if we cut it out, then someone else picks it up and eats it? But why do you fucking care?
Yeah. You know what it reminds me of? Arrested Development. In Arrested Development, where they're talking about like an open relationship, and it's like, do open marriages work? Well, it doesn't work for anyone. People delude themselves into thinking that it might work, and they try desperately only to fail like all the others, but it just might work for us.
But it could work for us. It's so stupid that it defies understanding or explanation. We talk about, not we, people, they talk about the rise of conspiracy theories in America and how, did you know there are these things called conspiracy theories? And suddenly they just rose up, and now suddenly all these people all over the world, they believe in these conspiracy theories. And we don't know why. Well, this is why. Because the normal people are going about their day and they say, why are we in Afghanistan? And why is this the longest war we've ever had? And their politicians go, I don't know. Because like if we left, then we wouldn't be there, and if we weren't there, then we would leave. So we can't do that, right? And they go, so what's your real reason for being there? Because you won't tell me. So maybe there's some secret reason why you're there. Maybe there's a conspiracy.
It's a staging point to, harass Iran.
But this is the point, is that they do this on everything, where based on their operating assumptions that they give the public, that the government is here to look out for the welfare and safety of the American people. And then the American people look around and they don't see that. And they ask why, and they're given non-answers or dismissals or nothing. Or like hey, look over here, and they wave their hand, and then they don't even run away. They just wave their hand, and you look at them, and then you look back at them and say, yeah. And they go, oh, I don't, next question. And they wonder, why is it that people get suspicious of them?
If you listen to this podcast, we probably don't need to tell you, but Scott Horton does amazing work on this. And so the concession, by the way, that Trump is, trying to get from the Taliban is that, and they probably don't even need to be told this, but at least the American government gets to sort of wag their finger and say it out loud, is don't host terrorists again. Like, don't let Osama bin Laden or don't let anybody like that. If anybody from Al Qaeda on our hit list is knocking on your door asking for a place to crash for the night, just say no. and just, you really it's very important that you just never do that. One, I'm pretty sure the Taliban has learned their lesson on that. Two, before the invasion of Afghanistan, the Taliban, the upstanding gentlemen they were, offered to sell out their guest, and we're going to give Osama bin Laden to us anyway. And three, despite us saying that, the United States will almost undoubtedly request that Afghanistan be a safe haven for certain terrorists that it plans on deploying against, China, Syria, right? Not to justify what's happening in China, but I have a feeling that, in the next 10 years, we're going to see a lot of Uyghurs from Xinjiang, the ones who are being kept in concentration camps in China. I have a feeling a lot of Uyghurs with guns are going to be laying
Hey, don't
over.
use that word on the podcast, please.
Right.
I know you're the black guy, but you don't abuse it.
A lot of Western Chinese. See, but to call them Western Chinese is already to justify. The point is, a lot of Muslims from Central Asia that are controlled by Red China, they're going to come to Afghanistan with guns, and America's going to be okay with it. The Chinese government will call them terrorists, but America will not mind the fact that foreigners who use armed political violence will be staying in Afghanistan. So the United States will say, Afghanistan, don't host terrorists, unspoken, except the ones we support.